Everyone, is me, Patchdown Bogat. I'm here yet again to make just another really cool video. This time it's going to be about Beelzebub. I find Beelzebub to actually be such a really good person to work with, just because he's one of my Patreons or Guardians. And I find him to be such a very interesting spirit because I remember when I first was introduced to Beelzebub was actually through Satan because Satan is my first guardian or patron that I actually worked with. And it was around the time that I was actually trying to differentiate between Beelzebub and Satan himself because being raised in a Christian household, I was pretty much taught that Beelzebub and Satan were like the same. But when I was starting to work a lot more fluidly with Satan, I believe that was his way of saying, well, this ingrained idea of Beelzebub and myself, well, let me try to like separate the two the best way I know how. And he did so by just simply introducing me to Beelzebub. And at that particular time, Beelzebub took the form of a Caucasian male about 12 to 14 years of age. And I thought that was like really interesting because at that particular point in my life, on my break when I were to work, I would go to a sizable closet, turn off the lights, and I'll just speak to Satan. And I'll do like my money mantras, my spells, and things of that nature, so that I could pretty much align myself with Jupiter, so that I could, gain more prosperity for myself. But before I even got into that, that's when the Beelzebub, he appeared, and then in his childlike form, simply just told me, he is Beelzebub, and I was kind of taken back by that. Not in a way where like I was like completely shocked that this supernatural occurrence is shocking, but it was more like he took the form of a child, and now I'm contemplating. Okay, the idea that I've received about this Beelzebub, this very great demonic king, this very powerful force, and trying to equate it to this child, I automatically just caught my senses, so to speak, and I said to myself, you know what? Despite what I may believe, looking at what the form that Beelzebub chose to, to take the form of, this is, Beelzebub, so I have to accept it as such. So it was interesting because he led me to a lot of articles, especially articles based off of my previous belief system in Christianity. And looking at it, it's like I tried to differentiate between my personal gnosis versus the prior belief system. And no matter how many, paragraphs and, reams of paragraphs that I was trying to, dig into and to try to understand the Christian, point of view of Beelzebub, it just wasn't the same because at that point I was completely deprogrammed and it didn't really fit the bill because I already been like at the point of no return because hell, I'm in the closet, in dark, complete utter darkness, doing money ritual spells. You know what I mean? So in other words, there is no going back for me. I am just completely a different person than what I was, at that um, point of being a Christian. Is like I was just two very different individuals, but you know, I thought it was very interesting because, as opposed to the Christian point of view or even other occultists, and mind you, this is within that same time frame that I was really trying to understand who Beelzebub really was. I was looking at other articles from different occultists, and of course, he's referred to as the Lord of the Flies and things of that nature. But I know for a fact that being I was able to look at that type of information because Beelzebub did use flies to, and he still does, by helping me to appreciate that he is near, because he is a very, very close Patreon. He's like the second closest to that of Satan to me, and he always shows himself as being near me by means of flies. But even currently, at this time, it's now March in New York City, and it's kind of not. It hasn't been that much of a really cold winter, but it's cold enough where it's not believable to see a fly, just buzzing around the place, because they're really, they come out in the summer. So right now, it's more like I would see this astral fly, if you will, this image of a fly buzzing around me, even though I know it's not physically there, but I know it's Beelzebub. And that really helps me to appreciate that, again, he's there. And he's someone that I have formed a pact with to help further my black magic. And that's something that's still very paramount in my life, because I want to know all forms of black magic the best way, that I can, so that I could further myself. But of course, in my other video, um, you'll probably like realize, like in that other video of, it's dedicated to Sorath, that he's like my fourth patron or guardian that's actually assisting me also in black magic, even though it's mainly Beelzebub. But Beelzebub is the one that I would normally go to, and a good close second would be that of Sorath, because he's a very powerful being. But when I notice that Beelzebub is nearby, I have like the opportunity to really hone in a lot more clearer of my black magic than what I would normally possibly can. Because if I were to go back to my experience with Beelzebub, like I said, when I was at my job, I remember, and mind you, this is when Beelzebub was getting more commonplace in my life. I saw many different types of flies. Either they be a horse fly, which is like a much bigger version of a house fly, and different other flies all over the place. And mind you, this is like many years ago, so it would be in the dead of winter. Just like what I was explaining just seconds ago, where it's winter now, even though we've experienced more like a spring like weather, because it's just how it is. It's very chaotic here in New York, but that's just how it is. But I would experience all those things, and it was really, really, you know, I guess I won't say shocking, but I guess amusing for me, because it's like this is something that I can't necessarily convince other people, even if I did explain it to them, because they wouldn't like really understand it, completely, because they're not used to the occult. So all I could say is, by going through those experiences and even learning more about Beelzebub, it's like I've become to realize that Beelzebub is so much more than just this big, huge fly, or how people like to view him as this big, huge fly. Because my research afforded me to learn that he actually has a lot to do with science, decomposition of the decaying body. And he's really into like the particles, and I mean on a scientific level. And I find that to be very astronomical, because that's something that's very different than what mainstream religions or even other occultists don't really say. They don't really speak about these things. And I find out to be really interesting, because if you, again, I'm relating to my other video of Sorath. um, it is Beelzebub that actually paved the way to have me work with Sorath, because Sorath is a good assistance to my black magic, as I alluded to earlier. But by paving the way, he caused me to be very sick, and that made a lot of sense to me then as well as now, because being the fact that he knows a lot about the sciences, and he's cleanses me through that sickness. um, that purification, that process really did make me take in Sorath a lot more fuller than what I would normally be on. So it's like I had to be attuned to his vibration and his frequency as well. And it's actually going very well. I mean, right now, working with Beelzebub alongside Sorav is kind of acting like Belial in a way where he's taking things in my subconscious and bringing it to the surface and going, well, if you have to change it, change it. But it's more like you have to acknowledge it and go on from there, because you have to acknowledge this first before we continue on. And I like how Sorath and Beelzebub, they're able to work together. And you may remember in that other video with Sorath, I also mentioned that one of the other patrons that I'm working with is Clornek. And if you think about the Vauden magic system, it's those three daemons that, if you think about that magic system, interestingly, there are also my guardians, and I work with them. So it's very funny how each and every one of them, they work in unison with one another, um, in connection with my black magic, and that makes it even more worthwhile. It's not a coincidence, but it's something that makes me feel really, really good. And I just felt like by making a video like this to dedicate it to Beelzebub, it's like I'm more than sure there are other experiences out there where Beelzebub worked with, you guys personally, and it may not be the same exact experience as me, but I know you guys must have had some really good, awesome experiences. So, if you guys want to leave your experiences down below in the comments section, so that we're able to facilitate that love and that devotion to Beelzebub, because he really does deserve it. Because um, if you think about the shit that I'm talking about, being not just the Lord of the Flies, but the Lord of Pestilence, you know, you want him to infiltrate your life, by means of um, just him being there, that presence, that demanding voice that he has, that commanding voice that he has, so that he could keep you on the left hand path, so you could be a better black magician. But that's my personal experience. Like I said, leave yours in the comment section. And don't please forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more updated information about the occult. And also to smash that like button as well. So with that said and done, like I said, I look forward to your experiences, your testimonials, if you will. And I'll just have to wait and see what you have to say. I love you all. Thank you so much. And please, I'm awaiting your testimonials. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.